Welcome to the Prophecy Club. We're going to be listening to the audio of some of Lindsey Williams' best DVDs. Now, in case you're not familiar with Lindsey, he served as a missionary on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline for some 3 years. He became friends with some of the elite that ruled the world. He stays in touch. They tell Lindsey what their plans are, and he tells you in these DVDs. And we're offering 3 of his very best DVDs valued at $106, all for a gift to the ministry of just $38 or more. Now, that's basically order 1, get 2 free. That's really a good deal, and it's called the July gift offer. Now let's go on over and listen to Lindsey Williams in one of these 3 DVDs.
British Empire, Europe, in the condition that you just saw, I was amazed. I had trouble believing that I was seeing what I was seeing when someone sent me this DVD from Europe. Just got it a few days ago. Now, let's look what will happen in America when this takes place. Now, keep in mind, global currency reset. Global, worldwide, all currencies. No longer just the United States of America. And many of our politicians know what's going on. Our president knows what's going on. They know this is going to happen. The World Bank has recommended something. I want to read it to you right off of their own ledger. These were notes from the IMF. They had a meeting on October the 9th, 2013, and they just released the minutes of the meeting a few days ago. And they said, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, released a report outlining its recommendations. You'll find this interesting because it has to do with you and me right here in the United States of America. They recommended an immediate global wealth confiscation. Did you catch that? Now, this is when they had their meeting, these are their recommendations. Now, they called this report, when they issued it, they call it taxing time. You go on the internet now, they can find it, and the title of it, taxing times, as if we haven't been taxed enough already. And it calls for the confiscation of household assets by a capital levy on citizens. Now, I'm reading their exact words right out of their report. I know they sound like some fancy words out here, but in a moment I'll try to interpret it if I possibly can. In other words, the best way to put it would be a global redistribution. They recommended increasing taxes. Now, you may want to jot these down. If not, you'll go back in the video and pick them up later. This is the IMF, International Monetary Fund, recommending this for the United States of America. And this is what's going to happen, by the way. And it said we're recommending recommending increased taxes. Secondly, instituting new capital controls, capital, money, new money controls, regulations for seizing Americans' investment equity, by the way, IRAs, 401ks, and they said that they want to do it in order to pay down outstanding debt to the pre-crisis 2007 level. Now, this is the recommendation of the International Monetary Fund, the very one who is seeing to it that we're going to have a global currency reset, which has already been planned. And my elite friend contacted me just recently and said, this is what's going to happen, is the reason that I felt I must let you know. Now, let's go over some of these phrases. Confiscation and nationalization of pension funds. Now, we're going to talk about this later with an expert, with a professional. I'm just a man that, by God's grace, years ago, had the privilege of rubbing shoulders with some of the elite on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, and have kept in touch with them over the years. Many of you know my story, that I was invited by the elite of the world to be their chaplain, and for 3 years' time I did. Many of those people I've kept in touch with over these years. They're now in their 70s and 80s. And by the way, many of these men actually regret what they did years ago. They're sorry. They have children. They've sent them off to college. They're out in the workplace. They're trying to make it like their dads did years ago. These people, some of them now in their 70s, are saying, I wish I had not done that. But they can't reverse what they did. Now the younger elite, whom the older elite don't necessarily always agree with, these are the things that they're doing in order to create the new world order that they want you and me and our children to live in. I have a message for them. I have no intentions in it being the way that they want it. But if they get their way, this is what's going to happen. You will see a number of things taking place between now and the time of the total financial collapse. Now, let me try, if I may, to explain once again. They gave me the date, which I gave you many months ago in a previous DVD, and they gave me the time that the actual total collapse of the currency will take place. And there are a number of things that will take place between that time and the time that the banks close and you lose the currency or the money that you've got in them. Many events will take place between that time because, as I mentioned to you, that event is not going to take place within the next 6 months, maybe not even the next year. It is going to happen, and I've warned you what you need to do. But let me list a few things that will take place between now and the time that this will happen. Number one, you are going to see shortly, within days. It might even happen before you receive this DVD. They merely said to me, Chaplain, within possibly 90 days. No more. So, by the time you get this DVD, it may have already been announced. And when it is, you'll see just how drastic it is. Now, again, let me list a few things that are going to take place between right now and the time that there is what I call a total financial collapse in the United States of America. Number one, you are going to see a global currency reset initiated by the IMF most any day. Secondly, you're going to see many of the items that the World Bank mentioned that they want to happen in the United States of America. You'll see them begin to transpire. Again, I believe, according to what I am reading between the lines sometimes, sometimes they say it out direct, sometimes I get it between the lines. I believe, according to what I'm reading between the lines from my elite friend, that we're going to see a confiscation and nationalizing of pension funds. They have to have it. The government is desperate. They need money at any cost. It matters not what they have to do or what chances they take. We are so much in debt. And the Federal Reserve is buying its own issues. And you remember that my elite friend told me back 4 years ago, he said, Chaplain, whenever this starts, it's all over with. He said they can't do that. Well, they are doing it because of quantitative easing 1, quantitative easing 2. They've got money out of thin air to work with. They've got $85 billion every month. And they literally are trying to keep everything afloat as long as they can, but they aren't going to be able to keep it that much longer. They must have something from somewhere. They've got to have some funds. What would be the most likely spot to go for ready money? You're right, pension funds. Federal pension fund, state pension funds, 401ks, IRAs, your private pension fund. Now, this is nothing new. It was done, I think it was just a few weeks ago. My wife is from Poland, and she was on the phone one day with one of her relatives, and they said something just happened in Poland, rather unusual. They said the Polish government announced this morning, out of a clear blue sky now, no knowledge of it prior, nothing whatsoever said before it happened. The Polish government just up and said one morning, we are going to pull 50% of all the money in every private pension fund out and claim it. They had to have the money. The government is in terrible condition, just like America and most of the other countries of the world are. So they did. They actually withdrew 50% of every private pension fund in Poland, and the government, I'll put it politely, stole it, took it. Now, there were no riots. This is what's so interesting. You need to understand how they're going to do this. There were not riots in Poland the next morning. There should have been. They should have been knocking on the State House. But there was, a week from then, no riots. Why? They got the check next month. It's just that simple. They didn't cut off their check just because they stole 50%. That just meant that the pension fund lacked 50% of everything that was in it to be able to invest and make money for the future, to pay the future down the line when the pensions are going to be due. So more than likely, until a year to a year and a half from now, nobody's check will be altered. They'll still get it. Isn't it amazing how naive people are in thinking that, oh, well, they'll take care of it a year from now. Oh, they're going to take care of it a year from now, all right. Global currency reset, by the time it gets through with what the government has already taken out of the pension fund, imagine how much will be there when those people believe that the pensions are going to be paid. Yeah, a year and a half, 2 years from now, that's when you'll see the riot. Now, the same thing's going to happen in the United States of America. They'll go into the federal pension funds. They'll go into the state pension funds, the private pension funds. They'll withdraw, I don't know how much. They haven't said. They haven't told me that. But they said that the same thing that happened in Poland will probably happen right here in America. And in the not too distant future, okay, think now. Global currency reset. Approximately 30%.
We'll be right back after this message. In 1980, an angel came to Dmitri Duduman and told him that it is written in the Bible and that America will be defeated in 1 hour by Russia. I just made a brand new DVD covering all of the secular, real-life proof that Russia really is preparing to do exactly that. Topics are: Arise, Devour Much Flesh, Russia in Prophecy, Russia Now Rich and Strong, Russia's numerous military expansions, Ukraine, and how it is making the bear angry. Russia is warning the U.S., but we're not listening. Russia is building their military, modernizing submarines, aircraft, missiles, and their army, while the U.S. is downsizing and filled with traitors and weaknesses. 2.5 hours, gift of $30. Go to prophecyclub.com or call 785-266-1112. That's The Russian Bear Rises at prophecyclub.com or 785-266-1112. Order today. It's time for the famous Prophecy Club Summer Blowout. You get 6 DVDs of your choice by calling 785-266-1112. Valued at $30 each, that's $180, all for a gift of just $100. Call 785-266-1112. Grab your cell phone, 785-266-1112. Not available on the internet. 785-266-1112. 6 DVDs for a gift of $100. Call now. And now, back to the program.
The same thing that happened in Poland will probably happen right here in America. And in the not too distant future, okay, think now. Global currency reset. Approximately 30%, your money is going to be worth less. Where's the government going to get their money from? They still have to pay Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, everything imaginable. You can't not do that. It's got to be done. Where are they going to get the money when the American dollar is no longer the reserve currency of the world, and anything that an American company buys from China, they'll be paying 30% more for it? How long is that going to be before it shows up on the hardware store and the grocery store and the other places that you'll be buying things? There will be a lag time in here, just enough that you're not going to riot. Oh yes, your pension fund, have whatever percentage, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, I don't know. Poland, it was 50%. And when they withdraw it, you aren't going to riot. You're going to sit back and say, well, they'll take care of it by the time, you know, things get worse. And oh, Social Security, sure, it's going to be all right. Younger people will pay for it. With the dollar being worth 30% less today than it was prior to the global currency reset, no, it won't be there. So, what will happen when the pension fund's money is confiscated? More than likely it'll be life as usual next month. Because after all, who cares? We'll just kick the can down the road a little bit further. What's going to happen again? Now, I'm items between right now and the time of the total financial collapse, which my elite friend said would take place. You remember in my previous DVD, if you haven't gotten it, you don't know the time, you know the time frame, please go back and get it. But in that, these things will happen in the meantime. Secondly, you are going to see in America a currency devaluation. It may be part of the global currency reset. And when I made my previous DVD, I did not realize that there was going to be a global currency reset. I knew nothing about it. I was only told this a matter of days ago, and put all the pieces together the best I could so I could warn you now as fast as possible. But currency devaluation, it happened in Cyprus, it happened in Iceland, it happened in Argentina, and it's happened in other countries. Why do you think it can't happen in America? After all, we have more national debt in the United States of America than all the rest of the world combined. Again, and this one is probably the most drastic, but when I was given the information a few days ago about the global currency reset, I realized how real this really is. The American dollar will lose its status as the world's premier reserve. It's over. It's toast. It won't be there anymore. You cannot trust your money in a bank. When you see this DVD, you probably will do what many people are doing and diminish that bank account to the very least you possibly can. Quite interesting, just after I received some of this information, I was at a friend of mine who owns a rather reputable business in the Scottsdale, Arizona area, and I happened to actually be in his office one morning, and we were talking about what he has to keep in the bank in order to operate his business. He said, "Chaplain, I must keep $1 million on account in the bank on any given day in order to maintain my business." He said, "I can't do business without it. I have to buy this and that and so on." He said, "I have to have that amount there as an average." He said, "Do you realize what I've got to lose if there is a devaluation of 30%? Now, he can't do anything about it. More than likely, you can do something about it. There's no reason why you have to keep any more than that account than you positively must keep there in order to operate your house or maybe to maintain the account without a service fee or something. You are going to lose a certain amount whether you like it or not. You can't completely get away from it and say, I'll lose nothing. But when you see this DVD about whether you can trust your bank, about the Dodd-Frank bill, about the new legislation that has just gone through Congress, I dare to say that you will change some of your plans as to how much you really trust that bank when you put your money in there, in a deposit.
Picture yourself in one of these scenarios. You go shopping and your credit card transaction is denied despite the fact that you know you have money in your account. Or you go to an ATM machine and you're informed that your withdrawal request has been denied. Or you're a public official, such as a school business administrator, county treasurer, municipal finance manager, pension fund administrator, or anyone who has responsibility for protecting public taxpayer funds. You're informed that all accounts have been frozen until further notice. As you investigate why you can't access money you know should be available, you find out that the bank has failed and has been closed until further notice by the FDIC. You also discover that the government will be confiscating part of your deposits in order to stabilize the bank. You believe that this can't happen here because the FDIC protects your money. You may have placed your money into one of the big banks because it has large vaults and is protected by the government. You may have placed public monies into a large bank because they're collateralized and the government will back them. Therefore, you think these funds are safe. All of these assumptions are not based on the facts. Perhaps you recall that in Cyprus, depositors' money was confiscated in order to stabilize the banks. Similar plans are already in place to do the same in the U.S. and other countries. In a nutshell, the banks in Cyprus were over-leveraged to the point that their liabilities exceeded their gross domestic product. The because the global bailouts of large banks in 2008 were so politically unpopular. A global banking troika of the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, and the European Union imposed a bail-in which bank customers were to have some of their savings seized in order to stabilize the banks. The losses to some clients were as high as 60%.
Cyprus was the test run. Now, that's where the European Union kind of let the cat out of the bag, what they planned to do on a bigger scale. But depositors took a real haircut. Interestingly, though, of course, the big boys got out. In the days before, they went after depositors' money, the small-time saver, $150 billion, I forget the number, left the Cyprus banks because the insiders knew what was coming. And the insiders will know what's coming when the next U.S. bank burns down. They'll get out and they'll leave the mom-and-pop depositors and maybe city governments holding the bag.
In order to protect themselves, the Cyprus government closed the banks 12 days, and people had limited access to their money. Long lines formed at the ATM machine.
The fact is that the confiscations in Cyprus were not a one-time event. The eventuality for this had already been planned in advance, and there are plans in place for confiscations of depositor accounts in New Zealand, the European Union, Canada, England, and the United States.
And we passed Dodd-Frank legislation. And people think, well, that's it for bailouts. No, that's not it. Actually, it's just going to be a bail-in. In order to maintain liquidity in failed banks, the European Union and the Federal Reserve have a policy of bailing in, which means you seize depositors' deposits. Those could be mom and pop up to their $250,000. It could be a city's deposits on deposit. It could be bondholders. That's what happened in Cyprus. That's what's happening right now with the Cooperative Bank in London, England, and that's what the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the Bank of England have jointly agreed to do here in the United States.
The large global and Wall Street banks are the ones at most risk because they've been gambling with depositor money on risky derivative bets and other speculative investment devices, which means that when, not if, these bets start going bad, the banks will be on the hook for their deficient value. According to the Bank for International Settlements, which is essentially a central bank for the world's central banks, the notional value of these derivative contracts is an astounding $700 trillion. Think 700,000 billion dollars. The entire world's GDP is only $70 trillion. There's not enough money on the planet to cover these bets. What most people don't understand is that once you give a bank your money, the money is legally no longer yours. Under the law, depositors are considered unsecured creditors to the bank and are treated as such under any bankruptcy proceeding. This type of loss happened with the collapse of MF Global. And while MF Global was a futures trading company and not a bank, the blueprint for confiscations was delivered here. The losses of customer funds were upheld by the legal system with the Sentinel case. Another important fact is this. These speculative derivatives have super priority status in a bankruptcy proceeding, which means that any derivative contract holder gets paid first, before shareholders, creditors, and depositors like you.
It could well be that local government deposits are at risk in the event of the bail-in of one of the major banks in Wall Street when they next fail. Those are unsecured deposits. Now, Wall Street likes to say they've been collateralized, but the derivatives holdings of the major banks is several times the world's gross domestic product. There isn't enough money in the world to cover major losses in that market. So if they start to go down, first, the counterparties to derivatives get covered. That's the new law. They get their money first. You'll get your money, you an individual depositor, or you a city, if there's any left. What you might get instead is equity in the bank. So instead of having $400 million to meet your city's payroll, you may have $200 million and $200 million in new stock in the bank in which you've just become a shareholder. But try meeting a payroll in stock in a failed bank.
If you think that the FDIC will still come riding to the rescue, consider these facts. This chart will look at three figures: the FDIC insurance fund balance, the total deposits in U.S. banks, and the total derivatives exposure of the big banks. The FDIC has approximately $25 billion in its fund to cover losses. The total deposits in U.S. banks totals $9,283 billion. The U.S. bank's derivatives total is $297,514 billion. The FDIC could only cover 0.25% of all deposits, and the FDIC could only cover 0.008% of the derivatives.
Looking at the FDIC Bank of England joint paper summary, the text clearly says that in the U.S. they will use the powers granted under the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act, and losses will be assigned to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Remember that as a depositor in a bank, under the law, you are an unsecured creditor. Moving further on down in this document, the text clearly says that the strategy for a failed global systemically important financial institution will be to assign losses to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Going further down the same document, you will see that the text clearly says that a resolution strategy for a failed globally systemically important financial institution will be to assign the losses to shareholders and unsecured creditors. Remember that you are now looking at an official government document and the plans for confiscation.
If you're a public official with fiduciary responsibility to protect public monies, this news is critically important with far-reaching implications about what your responsibility demands. If you can't deposit public monies into the large Wall Street banks without being at proven risk of losing access to it to confiscation under existing law, what options are there?
I'm going to interrupt right there, but I'm going to tell you in just a moment how you can get your very own copy of what you've been listening to. In the meantime, thank you for listening, thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your gifts of support. God bless. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. Lindsey Williams served as a missionary on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline for 3 years. He became friends with some of the elite that ruled the world. They tell Lindsey, he tells you, the plans of the elite. We're offering 3 of his best DVDs valued at $106, all for a gift of just $38 or more. That's basically order 1, get 2 free. They are the elite plans for the crash. Lindsey gives you the signs to look for before the collapse of the banks and crash of the dollar. Plus, 2 more collapses that will affect you more than the collapse of the dollar. In Currency Revaluation, he explains the greatest event in the last 1,000 years is about how they're going to do away with the Federal Reserve note, bringing in a gold-backed Treasury Reserve note. And in Health Tips of the Elite, he says there is no reason that many people have to suffer from many of the diseases they do simply because they do not know what the elite know that is discussed in this DVD. All 3 DVDs, the Elite Plans for the Crash, Currency Revaluation, and Health Tips, valued at $106, available for a gift of just $38 plus shipping. It's the July gift offer. $38 plus shipping at prophecyclub.com or 785-266-1112. The July gift offer, prophecyclub.com. Order today. In 1980, an angel came to Dmitri Duduman and told him that it is written in the Bible and that America will be defeated in 1 hour by Russia. I just made a brand new DVD covering all of the secular, real-life proof that Russia really is preparing to do exactly that. Topics are Arise, Devour Much Flesh, Russia and Prophecy, Russia Now Rich and Strong, Russia's numerous military expansions, Ukraine and how it is making the bear angry. Russia is warning the U.S., but we're not listening. Russia is building their military, modernizing submarines, aircraft, missiles, and their army while the U.S. is downsizing and filled with traitors and weaknesses. 2.5 hours, gift of $30. Go to prophecyclub.com or call 785-266-1112. That's The Russian Bear Rises at prophecyclub.com.